According to Israel's Central Elections Committee, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has a path to forming the fifth government in 2 years. But it'll be a difficult one. It appears the Netanyahu bloc is poised to secure 59 seats of a required 61 in the Knesset.
There's no reason why we should go to a fifth election. And they must come to Netanyahu and say, we want to be part of the government, we accept the results of this round, and form a right-of-center government that could aggressively pursue the opportunities we have ahead of us.
The religious Zionist Party, an alliance of the far right, fared better than anticipated and is expected to bring its projected 6 seats to a Netanyahu government. Members of the party have been banned in the past for anti-Palestinian sentiment. The Palestinian-Israeli parties are projected to lose seats this round. Voter turnout was low. The parties previously voted as one bloc under the Arab Joint List, but the group splintered, and a second conservative party called the United Arab List formed. Now its leader, Mansour Abbas, could potentially do something unheard of previously: support Netanyahu's government. Likud party members remain divided on what would be a historic alliance. Critics such as opposition leader Yair Lapid of the Yesh Atid party say Netanyahu's drive to remain in power is centered on finding a way to evade prosecution on corruption charges. And they argue forging ties with a religious Zionist party would create a racist, ultra-conservative government. But in this election, Netanyahu must attempt to forge a coalition with diverse, smaller parties. Given the narrow divide between the pro- and anti-Netanyahu camps, that means these smaller parties and their leaders find themselves with a huge influence in determining Israel's political path forward. Natasha Ganem, Al Jazeera, West Jerusalem.
Right, more with Harry Fawcett in West Jerusalem now. Hi, Harry. Just when you think it's all going to be predictable, just as it was again, this happens. Take us through the process from now, and I mean, is there a time frame on what we can expect?
Well, yes, the Israeli president has a certain period during which to assess who is the most likely of the contenders to be able to form a coalition government. That is usually the leader of the party, the single party that has got the most votes in the election. So that is likely to be Benjamin Netanyahu. And then he would have, in the first instance, 4 weeks from that point to try to put together such a coalition. But this development, which looked not to have happened when the exit polls, and even hours later, after the exit polls came out late on Tuesday night, with the United Arab List having not apparently made it past the 3.25% share of the vote required even to get into the parliament. Now that they have done, it has really set everything on its head, because now Netanyahu's bloc is under the margin, so is the potential opposition. There are those in Likud who are talking about potentially working with Mansour Abbas, the leader of this party, who has tried to position the party since deciding to break away from the rest of the joint list as somewhere in the middle between those two rival camps, between the sort of the mainstream and even right-wing Zionist parties and the Palestinian-Israeli Arab parties. He says he's doing so for pragmatic reasons, to try to get policy on the ground in favor of his constituents, and that to do such a thing, he would consider working with either the right or the left camp. He doesn't want a label. But if he worked with Netanyahu, and there are 2 ways he could do that, either unprecedentedly entering a coalition with the Likud and its other right-wing allies, or by promising not to vote against a minority government made up of those constituent parts. If that happened, he would find himself working on the same side as this extreme right-wing grouping, the religious Zionist movement, which contains descendants of a party that was deemed so anti-Arab racist in the 1990s that it was banned from the Knesset altogether. So huge contradictions there, but also on the other side too, there is a broad ideological spectrum of anti-Netanyahu parties, some of whom are themselves very right-wing, even further right-wing than Netanyahu, who also say they would not work with what they see as a conservative Islamist party such as that led by Mansour Abbas. So it's extraordinarily complicated. The gears are grinding once again in this long-running political crisis, and still no obvious resolution at hand.
Fascinating, isn't it? So interesting. Thank you, Harry Fawcett in West Jerusalem. A little more now on what it takes and what's in play to form the government in Israel. It's the Knesset. It's a 120-member legislature, so the magic number to come to power. The ones in blue, 61 of them. Now, projections show that that number, all of those blue ones, would elude Netanyahu and his Likud party. Also likely not possible for the coalition of parties which oppose him. And as we were just hearing from Harry, that small Palestinian-Israeli party, which the pollsters say could win as many as 5 seats, could be holding the balance of power. Israel's electoral system, it's a complex form of proportional representation, which, as we've seen, makes it quite difficult for any single party to win an election outright. More with our senior political analyst now, Marwan Bishara. Marwan, I don't even think we mentioned the name Ahmed Mansour yesterday when we were going through all the possibilities and what could happen. Suddenly, he sees himself in the spotlight, and as Harry was saying, possibly not just with Likud, but with the far-right party. Even for Israeli politics, this is pretty extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. That's why I don't think it's realistic. Theoretically, anything can happen. Theoretically, there is no difference between theoretically and practically. In practice, there is. So I don't think in real life we're going to see Naftali Bennett of Yamina party, the extreme right-wing party, sit with Abbas in the same coalition. Certainly won't see the Zionist religious party, the most extreme of most extreme fundamentalist Jewish parties, sitting together in the same coalition as an Islamist party. I don't see it at all. What I will see is in the next month or 45 days that there will be a lot of maneuvering, and Netanyahu will use Abbas, and Abbas will use Netanyahu in order for both of them to try to entice other parties to join. But those with a bit of a memory, Kamal, will remember how Netanyahu in the mid-90s incited against then Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin for daring to depend on a Palestinian party in the Knesset in order to pass a resolution within Parliament. So much so that that incitement was whipped up so feverishly that it led to the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin in 1995. That was Netanyahu, and that is still Netanyahu. Netanyahu that incited to the killing of one Israeli prime minister because he depended on an Arab party will not depend on an Arab party himself.
It's 2021 though now, Marwan, and I wonder, is Netanyahu more desperate now to hold on to power, given everything he's gone through, given he's been the prime minister for so long, the corruption charges and all of these things? Never know what he might do.
This is what's so both fascinating and disturbing about this whole episode, because we are now faced with a situation that basically the one person who can theoretically form a government would be Netanyahu. And I think he would be doing it by peeling off some of the members of the mid-sized parties, offering them ministerial positions, or even mid-sized parties themselves, like Blue White Party or whoever, and offering them really enticing offers in order for them to join the government. And even that is a bit far-fetched, because he doesn't only want them to join the government, he wants to change the judiciary, both in order to please the religious parties and in order for him not to go on trial. So I think that will be his path. However, and I think this is probably the thing that we have not discussed yet, that while he could be the deal maker, that he is the deal maker, he is also the biggest obstacle for the formation of a Likud-led coalition government. If Netanyahu leaves the scene or nudged off the helm of the Likud party somehow, Likud then could form a coalition government by a good number of mid-sized parties in Israel, including its nemesis Yesh Atid, including Blue and White Party, including the New Hope Party, including Yamina Party, and so on and so forth. So Likud has potential to form a government. It won't be great for Israel. It won't be great for the Palestinians. It won't be great for peace. But it is possible if Netanyahu leaves the scene.
Wow. It's going to be interesting, isn't it? Thank you. Marwan Bishara is our senior political analyst.
Thank you.